Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Monday, May 5th City Council meeting. Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderman Glab.
Here.
Alderwoman Bassey. Here. Alderman Davis.
Here.
Alderman Cook.
Here.
Alderwoman Miller. Here.
Thank you. Please stand for the pledge. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, the first thing that we're going to do this evening is the oath of office. I would ask that Alderwoman Ward 1, Bobby Bainey, please step up with Monty Johnson to give your oaths of office.
I, Bobby Bainey,
I, Bobby Bainey,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Illinois
and the Constitution of the State of Illinois
and the ordinances of the City of McHenry.
and the ordinances of the City of McHenry.
I will faithfully discharge the duties
I will faithfully discharge the duties
of the office of Alderperson Ward 1
of the office of Alderperson
to
Ward 1
the best of my ability.
to the best of my ability.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Next, Alderman Ward 3, Stephen Doherty.
Ditto with all that.
Yeah.
I, Stephen Doherty,
I, Stephen Doherty,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Illinois
and the Constitution of the State of Illinois
and the ordinances of the City of McHenry,
and the ordinances of the City of McHenry,
and I will faithfully discharge the duties
and I will faithfully discharge the duties
of the office of Alderperson Ward 3
of the office of Alderperson Ward 3
to the best of my abilities.
to the best of my abilities.
Alderman of Ward 5, Andy Davis.
I, Andy Davis,
I, Andy Davis,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Illinois
and the Constitution of Illinois
and the ordinances of the City of McHenry,
and the ordinances of the City of McHenry,
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties
and I will faithfully discharge the duties
of the office of Alderperson Ward 5
of the duties of Alderperson Ward 5
to the best of my ability.
to the best of my ability.
Congratulations. You sign your
City Clerk, Tricia Remmel.
I, Tricia Rammel,
I, Tricia Ramel,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
I will support the Constitution of the United States
I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Illinois
and the Constitution of the State of Illinois
and the ordinances of the City of McHenry.
and the ordinances of the City of McHenry,
And I will faithfully discharge the duties
and I will faithfully discharge the duties
of the office of City Clerk
of the office of City Clerk
to the best of my ability.
to the best of my ability. Thank you.
I, Wayne Jett,
I, Wayne Jett,
do solemnly swear
solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Illinois
and the Constitution of the State of Illinois
and the ordinances of the City of
and
McHenry.
the ordinances of the City of McHenry.
I will faithfully discharge the duties
I will faithfully discharge the duties
of the office of Mayor
of the office of Mayor
to the best of my ability.
to the best of my ability. Thank you, Monty Johnson, for doing that for us. I want to congratulate all those that were re-elected or elected for alderperson in their wards. I just want to thank all the supporters that are out there and what we've done in the City of McHenry, and look forward to the next 4 years with this council as a collaborative effort to really move the city forward. And so congratulations, everyone. Look forward to working with all of you. The next item on the agenda is public comment. For those that do not want to stay for the rest of the meeting, you do not have to stay. You're more welcome to leave if you decide to do so, okay? It's a fun one, so. Public comment, is there anyone from the public that would like to make a public comment? And this is for items not on the agenda this evening. So I do have two signed up. Sue Meyer? So if you could hit that center button there for me and state your name and address for public record.
Thank you. My name is Sue Meyer, and my address is 4013 Boone Creek Circle, McHenry. I just wanted to take the opportunity tonight not only to congratulate those of you who were just newly elected and sworn in, but to express my gratitude to all of you who serve. Can sometimes be a thankless job. I know that from experience, but I also know that it's a privilege and it can be a very rewarding job. Someday you're going to look back on your time here and you're going to be glad that you did it and proud of what you accomplished. I just wanted to say I was raised by parents who taught me that community service was part of the responsibility of every good citizen. So I just wanted to say, whether you always agree or don't agree, whatever, I admire all of you for having the courage and the determination that it takes to run for public office. And I just wanted to say that how much I appreciate your willingness to serve this community that we all love so much. Thank you.
Next is Jerry Condon.
I'm a little shorter than Sue. Very similar to what Sue just said, having also been on the city council, I wanted to say how much I also appreciate what you're doing and serving, because like Sue said, it can sometimes be the greatest joy, but it can also be sometimes one of the hardest challenges. Back when I first started, Sue was actually an alderwoman at the time, and Pam Altoff was mayor. Shortly after Sue became the mayor, I had called Pam Altoff and asked her about a question that was before us, and it was challenging, and I had a gut instinct of what my vote should be, but there was a lot of discretion. And Pam asked me a question that I thought has been the greatest advice I've ever been given, and I wanted to share that with all of you. She said to me, "Can you go to bed tonight being okay with your decision?" And I said, yes, and that was it. So I want to offer that to all of you. Oftentimes you're going to have controversial issues, but you're going to have in your packets a lot more information than what the public has. And so do what you know is right. Share it with your constituents. Great. Get them educated. But do what's right for this community. On a similar, I guess, stance, I also wanted to share that I've been at this, well, not this podium, but at a city council podium before, and I shared, and this is not directed at any one of you that are here tonight, but I feel so strongly in term limits. And as you're here about to start your journeys as this new city council, I want you to think about moving forward. And it's not about only serving a certain amount of time. It's about giving others in our community the opportunity to share in the great ability to make things better in our community. Fresh ideas. I'm not saying it should be, I don't know, I mean, it's up to you to put a time frame on it. And I don't think it should be even 2 terms. I think it should be more than that, because it takes a while to get acclimated. But I think you do need to think about allowing other people in our community an opportunity to serve, because although it's been done this past election, it is hard to unseat an current office holder. But just something to consider, because I think it's important, because you are about to start on another great journey, at least for those that are new on this council. And sometimes it's also great to let other people have a chance. But again, I thank you all for the service that you're about to give or have been giving for years. And I think our community has really grown, and the entire community is benefiting from the work that you guys are doing. So thank you.
Is there anyone else from the public that would like to make a public comment at this time? I see none. Okay. Moving on to the consent agenda, items 6A through 6I. Is there any council members wanting to pull any item here or plan on voting no on any of these items that are listed? See none? Looking for a motion to approve 6A through 6I? Alderwoman Miller?
I'll make the motion to approve 6A through I as presented.
Thank you. Second? Alderwoman Bobby Baney?
I'll second that motion.
Thank you. Discussion on these items? Alderwoman Bassi?
This is a question for both E and F. We're waiving the fees. I just wanted to know what the dollar amount is for each one of them, what the fees are that we're waiving.
So we usually, for events like this that are a group, we usually would negotiate because like each of our band concerts, our Pearl Street Markets usually will draw 400 to 500 people.
Right.
And so over the course of a 12-week, 15-week season, it'll be something we would negotiate depending on services. So I can't tell you exactly, and that would be the similar answer for F with the McHenry Riverwalk Foundation to tell you over the course of 19, we're probably getting only 150 to 200 people per summer Sunday. And so for those events that have a longer duration, we would say, what's the impact on our city services? And then create a price point from there. So it's not like a singular rental that's based strictly on, all right, if you have 55 people, it's $50, or if you have 100 people, it's $83. It would be something that we negotiated based on city services.
Okay, so just, do you have any idea for E or F?
For either of those, I would say you're probably the band cons, the Pearl Street Markets, more intensive. We set up some staging and do we have a little more presence there. So I would say probably in the 1,500 range for that.
For the whole season?
For the whole season.
Okay.
And again, this is just strictly a quick estimate here for you. And then from the summer Sundays, we really don't have a presence there at all, other than we clean up after the fact. And so, as an estimate, I would say we're probably more in the $500 to $700 range for that. We wouldn't have staff on at all, where we do have staff on for the Pearl Street Markets.
Okay, 500 to 700 for the whole season.
That's an estimate that I would say for that.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Alderman, go ahead.
Yeah, I just also wanted to comment, as far as the alcohol on that Sunday, I always have reservations of alcohol in the waterfronts. I think we should be looking at sectioning off the area next to the water when we're looking at alcohol. The only thing is I'll support this because it's a 1 to 4, and I would hope that nobody gets drunk over a 3-hour period. I mean, if it was an all-day event, I don't think I could support it, but with a short term like that, I don't see a problem.
Thank you. Any other comments by council? Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Miller?
Yes.
Alderwoman Baney?
Yes.
Alderman Glab?
Yes.
Alderman Doherty?
Yes.
Alderwoman Bassi?
Yes.
Alderman Davis?
Yes.
Alderman Cook?
Yes.
All right, next item on the agenda is 7A, use and zoning variations for 1214 Park Street. I'm looking for a motion to pass an ordinance granting a use variation and zoning variations for the property located at 1214 Park Street. Alderman Doherty.
I'll make a motion to approve 7A, the use and zoning variation for 1214 Park Street.
Thank you. Second, Alderman Miller.
I'll second the motion.
Thank you. Discussion by City Council on this item? See none. Anyone from the public that would like to make a public comment? See none. Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderman Doherty?
Yes.
Alderwoman Miller?
Yes.
Alderman Cook?
Yes.
Alderman Davis?
Yes.
Alderwoman Bassi?
Yes.
Alderman Glab?
Yes.
Alderwoman Baney?
Yes.
Thank you, Council. Next item on the agenda is 7B, a planned unit development at 1012 North Green Street. I'm looking for a motion to pass an ordinance granting a conditional use permit and final plan approval for a planned unit development to accommodate the existing school, reconfigure the parking lot, and construct a maintenance garage at 1012 North Green Street. Looking for a motion. Alderwoman Miller?
I'll make the motion to approve a Ordinance granting a conditional use permit and final plan approval for a planned unit development to accommodate the existing school, reconfigure the parking lot, and construct a maintenance garage, which I'm envious of, at 1012 North Green Street.
Thank you. Second? Alderman Davis?
I'll second that.
Thank you. Discussion by City Council on this item? Alderman Glem?
Yeah, just the fact that, looking at the, Athena, and I've seen it for many, many years, the fact that part of that parcel, 131, or 031 is, showing as District 15, not 156, and Ross tells me that the 6 was just a typo, that it was missed because it is sent to 4760 North Crystal Lake Road, but I still have reservations of whether or not that's true. I mean, I know 28 years ago it was showing District 15, and how is it that was never caught over all these years? And I think to some extent we need a little bit more research on it as far as exactly whose property that is. Do we have anybody here from District 15 that could substantiate the fact that they do not have any claim to that property?
No.
With that, I just feel that more research needs to be done, but that's my opinion. Thank you.
All right. So Alderman Glab, I know you mentioned this when you first got here. I would have just appreciated a conversation prior to this meeting, so we could have done our research and got it to the council to make a educated decision if that's the case. But coming to me at 6:45 in the afternoon of a meeting to tell me that you have reservations is quite ridiculous. So I appreciate your comment. Any other comments by City Council? Alderman Bassi?
I see the superintendent of the high school here. Do you mind coming up for a quick question?
That's fine.
It's a real simple one. It's just ownership of the property. To the best of your knowledge, who owns that property?
10 parcels there, we own them all. There seems like there's a mistake possibly with that one parcel. But if not, I have to call Josh because he owes us some back rent, hands down, you know. I'm going to go collect right now. But no, as far as we know, that whole parcel is ours. Obviously, the address is back to our district office, and there looks like there was an error. That is not binding what's in the Athena, what they're referring to. So as far as we're concerned, that's our property.
Okay, would you guys be willing to correct all documents? So going forward, it looks as if it's all legally yours?
Sure, of course.
Yeah, as part of the condition, we have to provide an updated plat of survey, so that would be provided at the end of the project, and we definitely look into it prior to having the final permit approved.
Okay, that's all. I just want to clarify who's the owner and make sure that everybody's all good. Thank you.
I'll just take this time to say thank you so much for your partnership. It's been an amazing run here this past decade, and we share your belief that we are that destination school district and destination city. So we appreciate your partnership. We appreciate all your support, and it really is a blessing to our kids and our community. So I appreciate it and thank you.
Thank you for all you guys do.
Great.
Alderman Glad, do you have a question for them?
Any questions?
Well, just basically, I just could have mentioned the fact that I know I've talked to Ross, and Ross says they had checked at the county and the mail. Tax bill sent to 156, and if you look at this, it says that. It says mail to 156. However, it says the owner is 15 right below it. So I think it's in question as far as who does own that property. And again, I just feel to some extent, I feel we should be absolutely 100% sure, especially considering if Ross had checked with the county, why hasn't the county taken and made the corrections in their websites? So, yeah, if you know the answer.
It's a long. The reason for the 6 being gone is this is a long description. Yes, but the county is not. It's been this way for many, many years, and the county is not very quick to fix mistakes that we point out. This is not a legal document, right? Like Athena isn't. So that's why we go back to the tax bill, and I have the tax bill pulled up right here, where it shows McHenry Community School District 156, 4716 West Crystal Lake Road. McHenry is the owner of the property, or the mail-to address. So the 6 is missing on the description. It's a typo. We looked into it when we sent out the notices. That's all, council, that's all I can tell you, so.
I also know that we got a plat of survey here that you can't read, and that staff is requiring one after construction. I mean, we wouldn't let a developer develop without a proper plat of survey.
The plats always come afterwards, because it shows the structure. So the new structure that they're building and the new layout that they're doing of the parking lot will be reflected on the new plat of survey. We also check dimensions to make sure that the structures are placed in the proper spaces per the ordinance. So they do come after the fact.
I understand that, but what I'm saying is we have a plat of survey here that you can't read.
We will have a new one after the project's
But
over.
we should have one before we review the
I
project.
don't have an ordinance that requires that, no.
Well, I'm not saying to record an ordinance. I'm just looking at what makes common sense. And it's the fact before you look at a project, that's the first thing you've got to do is look at where the plat is, where are the boundaries. And in this case, I don't think we've necessarily taken and done our due diligence as far as exactly where that is. So, again, I can't support it without all that information. Thank you.
Any other comments, questions by council? Anyone from the public that'd like to make a public comment? Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Miller?
Yes.
Alderman Davis?
Yes.
Alderwoman Bainey?
Yes.
Alderman Glad?
No.
Alderman Doherty?
Yes.
Alderwoman Massey?
Yes.
Alderman Cook?
Yes.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is 7C, is a mural at 3411 West Elm Street. A motion to approve a mural agreement and approve the social media voting process to select the final mural design at 3411 West Elm Street. Looking for a motion. Alderman Doherty?
Sure, I'll make a motion to approve a mural agreement and approve the social media voting process to select the final mural design at 3411 West Elm Street as presented.
Thank you. Second, Alderwoman Bainey?
I second that motion.
Thank you. Discussion by City Council? See none. Anyone from the public that'd like to make a public comment regarding this item? Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderman Doherty?
Yes.
Alderwoman Bainey, sorry.
Yes.
Alderman Glad?
Yes.
Alderwoman Massey?
Yes.
Alderman Davis?
Yes.
Alderman Cook?
Yes.
Alderwoman Miller?
Yes.
Thank you, Council. Next item on the agenda is 7D, thermoplastic pavement markings. Motion to approve the bid award for the 2025 thermoplastic pavement marking contract to Precision Pavement Markings Incorporated in the amount of $55,850.70. Looking for a motion to approve. Alderman Cook?
I approve D as presented, please.
Thank you. Second? Alderman Davis?
I'll second that motion.
Thank you. Discussion by City Council? Alderman Cook, go ahead.
This is the entire city with all the thermoplastic walkways, everything, correct?
It's not the entire city, it's a portion of it.
Okay, I must have missed that in the... Narrow it down for me. What was it?
Like how many feet?
No.
Oh.
Kind of, sort of where?
It's just various longitudinal lines, crosswalks, stop bars throughout the city. We try to do it a portion of town each year.
Correct.
So.
That's what I was getting at. You know,
yes.
You do sections of it
yes.
every year and all that. Okay.
But we're not doing the entire city.
Right. That's why I wanted to narrow it down. Thank you.
Any other comments by City Council? Anyone from the public that'd like to make a public comment? Alderman Glad, go ahead.
Yeah, I just have a question on the thermal marking. Are we talking residential streets and marking this, other than crosswalks?
So it would be stop bars and crosswalks in residential areas, and then any longitudinal lines.
Okay. I mean, we're not talking, let's say, some of our busier roads, like in Whispering Oaks, Royal and the Front Royal, and Oakwood, we're not looking at putting stripes down the middle of the street.
If they're not currently striped, we're not adding any striping. This is just replacing existing.
Those are residential streets, and I know at one time staff They're striping one of them, and it's like, took forever for that thermal to take and wear out.
We have no intention of
Yeah,
adding
because
stripe
you
edges.
change the flavor of a residential area by doing that.
Sure.
All right, thank you.
Any other comments by city council? Anyone from the public? Last chance. Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderman Cook?
Yes.
Alderman Davis?
Yes.
Alderwoman Bainey?
Yes.
Alderman Glad?
Yes.
Alderman Doherty?
Yes.
Woman Vacy?
Yes.
Alderman Miller?
Yes.
Thank you, council. Next item on the agenda is McHenry Music Festival date change. A motion to amend the dates for the 2025 Rise Up event, canceling Thursday, September 11th, and adding Sunday, September 14th, 2025, with event and liquor hours opening at 3 p.m. and closing at 10:30 p.m. I am looking for a motion to Alderwoman Bainey.
I would like to make a motion to amend the dates of the 2025 Rise Up event, canceling Thursday, September 11th, and adding Sunday, September 14th, 2025, with event and liquor hours opening at 3 p.m. and closing at 10:30.
Thank you. Second? Alderman Davis?
I will second that.
Thank you. Discussion by city council? All glad?
Yeah, just think Sunday nights at 10:30, you got kids that have school the next day, but then I guess trading it for Thursday, it'd be the same as far as Thursday night then with kids that have to go to school on Friday, so I guess it's kind of a trade-off. That's about all I got to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion by city council? Alderman Cook?
I'm glad they're not doing it on 9/11, because that's a day of remembrance and all that. So I'm in agreement with it.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments by city council? Any public comment regarding this item? Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Bainey?
Yes.
Alderman Davis?
Yes.
Alderman Cook?
Yes.
Alderwoman Miller?
Yes.
Alderwoman Vacy?
Yes.
Alderman Doherty?
Yes.
Alderman Glad?
Yes.
Thank you, council. Next item on the agenda is discussion item regarding the TIF presentation. Ross, who's going to kick this off? Doug, you want to go ahead and kick us off?
Thank you, Mayor. At the, I think it was the February 11th City Council meeting, the council discussed 3 proposed new TIF districts, one on Richmond Road, one on West Route 120, and one on Main Street and South Front Street. And the consensus at the end of the meeting was that staff would work with the consultant to come in and evaluate the feasibility of those TIF districts and just see how feasible they were. Staff contacted various consultants, and we were fortunate to have Pete, I don't want to butcher his last name, from Tesca Associates, offered to come in and look at the TIF districts and give a presentation to the council at no cost to the city. And he's here this evening to answer your questions and give this is a preliminary assessment of the 3 proposed areas. It's just a 50,000-foot overview, so much more analysis would need to be done. So I'll turn it over to Pete.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Awesome. Okay, yes, thanks. Yeah, my name's Pete. I'm from Tesca Associates. I am a planner. I've been with Tesca for probably about 20 years now. We specialize in landscape architecture, land planning, and development economics. I pretty much specialize in tax increment financing. That's what I do. I've been doing it for about 20 years now, and I've been involved in the creation of probably over 100 TIF districts now, all throughout the state of Illinois, in the Chicago area, further out into the suburbs and downstate. So as Doug mentioned, I'm not here to try to sell you guys on anything. I'm just here to kind of talk to you guys about TIF, answer any questions that you might have. I did an overview, kind of a brief overview of the 3 areas that you guys are talking about. I'm sorry, I'm Italian. I kind of talk with my hands. So again, I can't guarantee that any of these areas are going to qualify. I'm just here to just kind of give my general observation. I looked at all three areas, and I can give you an idea of whether it's even worth pursuing or not. So I've got a couple slides I'm going to run through. It looks like you guys have a big agenda, so I'll be as quick as possible. Oh, all right. So I'm happy to stay as long as you guys want and answer any questions that you guys might have. First, before I get started, is anyone here familiar with TIF at all? Or is this kind of new to everybody?
It's new to a couple people probably, so.
Okay. Oh, yeah, I'll start off with kind of just kind of TIF 101, what is it? And then I'll get into kind of the more specifics. So, first of all, and I am going blind, so I might need my glasses. The city does currently have one active TIF district in the downtown area. So I'm going to just kind of talk about the three areas, other areas that are kind of proposed. You can see the red circle area, that's kind of general area where your existing TIF district is. And so I looked at these three areas, the Richmond Road area, which is kind of north of the downtown, and then going west of the downtown was the second area, and then south was the third area. So those are kind of the three areas that I looked at. A couple of things to keep in mind if you do want to create either one or multiple TIF districts. Everything has to be contiguous, so you'd have to create a boundary where all the parcels kind of touch. And it's generally beneficial if you have an existing TIF district, if you want to create a new one, you want it to kind of touch the existing one because there is the potential to port money between different TIF districts for eligible TIF projects. So if they don't connect, you can't do that. If they do connect, there is the possibility to transfer money between the three.
And just for the record, that's not to say that we would advocate to do that, but
Nope.
I think when it is set up, if the city council opts to move forward, it just provides flexibility for the future.
Exactly. So what is tax increment financing? I know it can be a controversial topic, and it sounds a lot more confusing than it actually is. But it works off of property taxes. The thing to remember is it is not a new tax, and it does not affect the actual assessed value of properties within the area. What it does do is it affects where the money goes once you pay your property taxes. So kind of the concept is you're trying to identify areas that are in need of help, areas which have deteriorating property maintenance, the property values are decreasing, vacancies, those types of things, which tend to create a spiral. Once those negative impacts start happening, people can't generate as high enough rents, and then the property maintenance goes down, you start getting into that downward spiral. So TIF is kind of designed to hopefully address that situation. There are very few economic development tools that are available to local municipalities, and TIF is one of them. There's pretty much two in the state of Illinois that the state provides. There's tax increment financing, and there's enterprise zones, so TIF is a pretty popular. Like I said, they're pretty common throughout the state. There's probably over 1,500 TIF districts in the state of Illinois now, in probably over 500 communities. Anywhere, like I said, the city of Chicago uses them extensively, the suburbs use them extensively. I've created TIF districts in rural areas downstate as well. So it can be an effective tool, but again, it's just a tool that local municipalities can use. And I'll explain kind of how it works here. But kind of the goal is, like I said, eradicating blighting conditions. I know when people hear the term blight, they kind of freak out. But when I'm talking about blight, we're really talking about blight as it's defined in the TIF Act. And I'll get to that in a couple of slides going forward. But the goal is to encourage private development. So we're trying to encourage people to invest in their property to increase the assessed value so that it benefits all the taxing districts at the end of the TIF. That's the goal. And to improve existing public utilities, that's another big thing that municipalities use. Infrastructure improvements are very expensive, as I'm sure you guys all know, and TIF is a tool, particularly in aging communities with aging infrastructure, to help fund some of those infrastructure improvements that are having a negative impact on people investing in their property. So TIF funding, the TIF Act is very specific on, if you establish a TIF district, on what you are allowed to do with the TIF funds that are generated. So again, utility and infrastructure improvements, road improvements, environmental cleanup, acquiring vacant or dilapidated structures, property acquisition. The main thing to keep in mind, it's generally used for site improvements and improving existing buildings. It's not intended to fund new construction. So the goal of TIF is to not cap the existing taxing districts to fund somebody to build a new building. The goal is to rehab existing deteriorating structures, acquire properties, environmental cleanup, infrastructure improvements, but it's not intended to directly fund new construction. And just on that note, the TIF, if you do establish a TIF, and some of you might be aware with your existing TIF, the TIF Act is extremely, transparent. If you establish a TIF, your existing TIF, you have to notify all the taxing districts every year. You have to file an annual report with the state of Illinois. All those reports are available on the Illinois Comptroller's Office. So you could look up any TIF district in the state and see exactly how much money those TIFs are generating and what exactly they're spending that money on. So the TIF program is very transparent. So how does it work? Again, this looks super complicated, but it's really not that complicated. It runs off property taxes. So if you establish a TIF district, we set up what we call the base level, which is essentially the value of the property on the day that you establish the TIF. Then any increase in property taxes from that base, that's what goes into the TIF district. So if property values remain the same or if they decline, no money's going into the TIF, nobody is affected. The only way the TIF generates revenue is if someone invests in their property to increase that value, and just that increase is what goes into the TIF district. So essentially what you're doing is all of the taxing districts are agreeing we're going to forego the short-term increase to invest that money into the area to increase the value of properties over the lifetime of the TIF, so that all of the taxing districts can benefit from the increased property value at the end of the TIF. That's kind of the goal of how it should work. So, eligibility. The TIF Act is very specific on how you can designate a TIF area. You have to do a pretty extensive study with a bunch of research. So again, this is a high-level overview. I did look at the area, but I did not do a full study, so I can't guarantee any of these areas will generally qualify, but I can give you a pretty good idea if it's worth pursuing or not. So there's two primary ways to designate a TIF district. One is called a blighted area. Again, I know that term is loaded, but in the TIF Act, what a blighted area means is you meet 5 of the criteria. There's 13 eligibility criteria. If you meet 5 of them, you can call it a blighted area. If a majority of the properties are 35 years in age or older, and you meet 3 criteria, then we can call that a conservation area, which is essentially we're trying to conserve and stop the area from becoming a blighted area. So those are kind of the two primary ways you can designate a TIF district. Through the eligibility criteria, the standard in the Act is that the criteria should be widespread and evenly distributed throughout the whole area. So if you establish an area and there's a bunch of vacancies just in this corner, and then you designate this huge area, that really doesn't work. It should be kind of widespread and distributed throughout the area. So that's kind of the standard for the TIF Act. And then looking at the three areas that you designated or that you asked me to look at, there are also specific criteria for improved land versus unimproved land. So TIF really is geared towards improving existing deteriorated properties. It's not really intended for vacant land. So particularly in that southern area, there was a lot of properties that don't have any buildings on them. Those are much more difficult to qualify for a TIF district than actual properties that have buildings on them. It's not to say that you can't do it. It's just much more difficult. The standards are different, and the TIF Act really isn't guided towards that. So you have a much better chance of establishing a TIF district in the areas, particularly the north area and the west area, where there are existing structures, than that area to the south, where there's a lot of vacant or undeveloped land. So I'm just going to run through the criteria real quick. Just kind of my general overview of the three areas, just to give you an idea if I think the areas will qualify. So the first criteria is dilapidation. This is where we're looking at severe issues with properties, safety issues, buildings that probably need to come down. I didn't see a whole lot of evidence of that. There might be a couple scattered ones here or there, but it wasn't really widespread of properties that reach that level of, you guys might know a couple off the top of your head, but I didn't really see that as a primary factor that would be used to qualify an area. Obsolescence, this is where we're looking at buildings that no longer suit the function for which they were built. So when I look at obsolescence, I'm looking kind of at two ways, either structural obsolescence, where we're looking at a building, say a building that was built in the 1920s and the loading bay doors aren't big enough for modern trucks or that don't have modern amenities. And we're also looking at economic obsolescence, where the building just doesn't function in the marketplace today. So we kind of look at those both ways. I think you probably have a pretty good chance of qualifying for obsolescence, particularly in those developed areas. Again, we'll have to, if you want to proceed, we'll have to take a closer look. Thank you. That obvious, huh? So we're looking at structural obsolescence. We're actually looking at the actual condition of the building, and we're looking at economic obsolescence. Does it compete in the marketplace? Can it generate rents? Is it economically viable building? So I think you have a chance on obsolescence. Deterioration, this is kind of a step below dilapidation. Where dilapidation, we're looking at severe structural issues. Deterioration is not quite as severe, so that we're looking at building needs pointing, potholes, cracks in the sidewalk, needs a new roof, broken windows, those types of things. It's generally pretty easy to find deterioration in any developed area that isn't relatively new. I found plenty of instances of deterioration. We're looking at buildings and site improvements, so we're looking at roadways, sidewalks, and actual physical structures. So that one would probably be an easy one to qualify under. Illegal uses, that's pretty straightforward. That would have to be actual documented cases of illegal uses where they got some kind of a ticket, where they're doing something illegal, selling drugs, prostitution, some actual illegal use in the building. I very rarely use that one. You don't really see that very often. It'd probably be a long shot to qualify under illegal uses. Below code standards, again, this would have to be documented typically by your code enforcement department and that we're looking for actual major code violations. So minor things like property, like weeds growing up, you didn't mow your lawn, that's not sufficient enough to qualify, but we're looking for actual structural code standards, health, safety, and would have to actually be documented by actual violations issued by the city. So I can't really comment on that because we'd have to do some research with your code enforcement department, but that's what we'd have to do to qualify that. Excessive vacancies, again, pretty straightforward. If there's excessive vacancies, you can qualify. I did see a number of vacancies in the areas that I looked at. I can't really tell you 100% if there's enough to qualify. The act isn't really super specific on what exactly excessive means. So that's kind of, you got to kind of feel that out. But I would, if you wanted to proceed, we would do a survey of all the properties. We'd map that out and see exactly where the vacancies are, how long they were vacant. We'd try to research that and determine if that would qualify. So there's a chance that you could qualify under that, but we'd have to get an exact count. Lack of ventilation, again, I've done over 100 TIF districts. I've never once used this criteria, so probably not. That we're looking at, think turn of the century, high rises built right next to each other where the windows, there's no windows, no ventilation. That's really not a thing that we see anymore. I'd be super surprised if that one would qualify. Again, I've never used that before, so probably not. Inadequate utilities, we would work with your city engineer or your public works department to determine what we're looking for is our utilities and public infrastructure sufficient to support new development. So again, infrastructure is super expensive. This is a very common use of TIF, community set up TIF to upgrade sewer lines, upgrade water lines. That is a thing that could really stall new development if you don't have the infrastructure to support it. So again, I can't really comment 100% if that would qualify. We would have to work with your engineer or your public works department to determine if that's a factor. I would think you're probably going to, in the area, just from looking at it, I would think there are probably some underground sewer and water main issues, but I can't tell you that for sure. Excessive land coverage. This is kind of what it says, excessive land coverage. We're looking at multiple buildings on a lot, buildings that are too close together. This one's kind of tricky, particularly when we're looking in a downtown area, because that's actually a common environment in a downtown area. So you'd kind of have to judge if that's having a detrimental effect on development. I'd probably say that would be a long shot, but we would have to take a look at that. But we're looking at multiple buildings on a lot, that type of thing. It's pretty straightforward. Deleterious land usage, these are kind of inappropriate land use relationships. So if you're looking at like a gas station next to a single family house, that's not something you want to see. Industrial uses next to residential uses, things that just kind of don't go together and that would provide negative impacts on those properties that you could use TIF to potentially acquire those properties to address those inadequate land use relationships. I did spot a couple of them that I took some pictures of that looked kind of wonky to me. Again, I can't tell exactly how many of those there are. There are probably a few. Typically in an older downtown area, you'll see a lot of instances of like old industrial facilities that have been there for a long time where, more newer commercial and residential kind of developed around it. So there's a potential that one could be a possibility. Again, I did see a couple of them. We just don't know how many there are. So we'd take a closer look at that, but there's a chance that it could qualify under that one. Environmental remediation, this is EPA environmental cleanup. That would have to actually be documented by the EPA with some kind of phase 1, phase 2, whatever the situation might be. A lot of times I'll run into situations where there's like an old gas station where I know there's an environmental issue there, but unless it's actually documented by EPA and started that process, we can't use it. So we would have to do some research on there. Again, in these older type downtown environments, typically there are a lot of where you'll see that there was a gas station there 50 years ago and there's an underground storage tank somewhere. Those are the types of things that TIF can be super useful for, because that's the kind of thing where, if I'm coming in to potentially do a development and I find out there's underground storage tanks or some environmental issue, that's a big cost, and that's going to make me kind of, where the TIF can be used to address those issues to make those sites more economically viable. So, but we'd have to do some research to see if there's any of those actual documented EPA sites. And lack of planning. This is where we would, and lack of planning is probably going to be relevant, particularly in an older downtown environment where we're looking at, was the area developed with the guidance of a plan or before there was any type of plan in place? So I don't know. I did pull up your current comprehensive plan. But we would have to do some research to find out when exactly the city first adopted any type of a plan and when the areas that we're looking at actually were developed. And if those areas were developed prior to a plan, then it could potentially qualify under lack of planning. But in addition to that, we would be looking for actual issues that arose because of the lack of planning. So typically we'll see things like, oddly shaped parcels, that really skinny parcels that aren't suitable for development or that don't meet your current zoning code, streets with weird accesses, properties that don't have enough, that aren't large enough to support parking, those types of things. So there's a good chance you could qualify under lack of planning. And if there's one more, decline in EAV. This is the big one where we're looking for that the area as a whole has declined in 3 of the last 5 years. So we're basically total up the EAV of the area and we look at the trend. So we're looking at the 5-year trend of property values going up or our property values going down. If property values are going down, that's probably a good sign that TIF might be something that could help. If property values are going up, that's probably a sign that maybe TIF really isn't necessary. But we'd have to do some research and look into that. So I can't really tell for sure if that would qualify. We'd have to pull, again, depending on the areas you're looking at, and we'd do a research over the past 5 to 6 years to see what the trend is.
So Pete, could you touch on the second point here on the slide, which is even if CPI, even if it is going up, but it's less than CPI?
Yes. So there's 3 ways to qualify as decline in EAV. First off is just a straight decline. So if the area has declined in 3 of the last 5 years, you qualify. We will also look at the area, the designated project area, and compare it to the rest of the city of McHenry. So if, say, the project area didn't decline, but it only went up by 1% over the last 5 years, and the rest of the city of McHenry has gone up by 12%, then that's we're looking at the marginal rate of increase, so we're comparing it to the city. So that could indicate that the area is lagging behind the rest of the city, and we will also compare to the CPI, the Consumer Price Index. So we look at the rate of CPI, and actually, I won't get into a big thing about the economy lately, but it's made it a lot easier to qualify under the comparison to the CPI, the way the CPI has been going the last 2 or 3 years. So there's 3 ways to look at that.
One of the things I wanted to mention on that is on our TIF that we have right now, basically one of the criteria that we hit was a decline in EAV. Actually, it wasn't a decline, but it's like what you had mentioned, and that's the fact that at the time, back in those days, it was a robust time where the EAVs were going up approximately 9% throughout the city, but yet the downtown area was lacking at 6% over those 4 or 5 years. So that's where we met the criteria to start that TIF in the first place.
Yeah, so that is a way to qualify it, and that shows that the area is lagging compared to the rest of the city. So that shows there's probably some type of an issue there. and then combined with the other factors, that could be a way to qualify the area, absolutely.
Is there any questions from Council? Alderman Glab, go ahead.
Yeah, you know, we talked about the qualifications and everything else. You did slightly touch on the fact that it affects property values. And the thing is when you create an EAV, when you create a TIF, basically the EAV if you look at your property tax roll, and you look at every single entity as far as taxing body, it affects the areas for every one of those taxing bodies. So in reality, even though it might be very incremental, let's say on my tax bill it says county tax, it will affect the county tax across the whole county.
Well, it will create a new line item on your tax bill for the TIF. So again, it would just be any increase that would go into that TIF. Now, if you're doing it correctly and if the area genuinely qualifies under those criteria, then property values aren't increasing. So it's not really affecting the county, as the property values aren't really increasing. So if you're capping the county on an area that's not increasing, they're not really losing anything.
But if you create a TIF and the percentage goes up in that area, that part that would normally go to help pay for the levy that all the taxing bodies have charged, that means everybody else is paying a little bit more because that part is not going in to the pool of each individual taxing body's.
Sure. Well,
right.
A couple of things.
It does affect everybody else's property taxes. What I'm getting.
A couple of things I'll say to address that. First of all, the primary, the legal standard for TIF in Illinois is what we call the but-for test, which means but for the establishment of the TIF, new development would not occur. So, if new development's going to happen anyways, you probably shouldn't be establishing a TIF. But if everything is stalled, property values are stagnant, but for the establishment of the TIF and providing incentives, new development's not going to happen. So if you don't do something, then everything's just going to stay the way it is. The other thing I would say is, we're trying to target the smallest possible area that qualifies, that will provide the greatest benefit for the city. So we want to have the least amount of impact on the taxing districts that we can while accomplishing the city goals. I can give you an example. I won't say the name of the community, but I'm working with one of your neighboring communities to establish a TIF district, and this exact question came up, particularly from the school district that had the exact same question. And so we did some math to determine basically what the impact would be on that taxing district. And we pulled up the EAV of the area that we were talking about. It was a downtown area. In comparison to the school district at large, and the TIF represented, it was 2.6% of their total EAV. So yes, we capped the school district for that area that we designated, but it was 2.6% of their EAV. So it really wasn't a great impact, and that's really not going to have a significant impact on the other taxing districts.
But that's on the taxpayers of that district. You're talking the school district. It doesn't affect what the school collects. The school collects everything that they appropriate. TIFs do not take away from the taxes of the schools when the TIF is incorporated, correct? Right. So everybody else pays a little bit more.
I'm saying it's a minimal.
Okay. And I know they're minute amounts, but every little bit, counts as far as going into property taxes. It's a very touchy subject out in this area.
It's a very touchy subject everywhere.
I'm sure it is everywhere. Another thing I want to, in this last chart, how does successful TIF generates revenue? Once the TIF expires, other taxing bodies collect taxes on the full EAV. Okay. Yes. In other words, the property is now assessed, and the entire EAV is included in the pool for every taxing body, as far as how much money that everybody pays and what their share is, so that everybody else's tax actually is relieved a little bit because now that EAV is added in to the mix.
Right, like I said earlier, the general concept is, and I always urge municipalities when they're exploring TIF to work with their local taxing districts, to bring them on board through the process. And if you do decide to proceed, you know, the TIF Act requires that you have meetings, we call it a joint review board, with the affected taxing districts to present the plan to them and to get their input. But yes, like I said earlier, the concept is basically all of the taxing districts are agreeing that we're going to forego those short-term increases so that we can use that money to incentivize development, to increase the value of properties in the area, so that at the end of the TIF, all of the taxing districts can benefit from that increase.
Right.
So.
Well, but the taxing bodies don't really, they don't benefit from it. Basically, the taxpayers
absolutely they do.
The taxpayers do. Because the EAV, I mean, if the EAV goes down, everybody pays more taxes. I mean, the tax bodies are going to, no matter what, whatever they take and they appropriate and they levy for taxes, they're collecting. They don't collect more or less. This is what they collect. And therefore, you're talking about looking at what the entire EAV is, let's say, for a school district, okay? And it affects what everybody in that area pays, because this extra EAV changes mix as far as the total EAV. As everybody's property goes up, this property goes up, this money goes into a different pool, so it's not part of the EAV that generates the taxes for what the school district took and appropriated.
Taxing districts will absolutely get a huge benefit at the end of a successful TIF. I can give you many examples of taxing districts that there's one by Midway Airport where they used the TIF to create a hotel district. At the beginning of the TIF, there was basically a vacant piece of property. At the end of the TIF, there's something like 8 or 12 hotels there. It increased the EAV of that area by something like $90 million. Don't quote me on exactly what that number is, but it was a gigantic amount. Without the TIF, none of that would have happened.
Correct. I understand that.
So
but
that's
that helps
huge
pay,
benefit
that helps
for all
pay
the taxing districts.
That helps pay for what the taxing body appropriates. Taxing body appropriates so much. I don't know if it's through the whole state or whatever. We have, a limit of what taxing bodies can. It's called the PTEL out here. I don't know. Okay, so that's as much as the taxing body can charge, and it doesn't matter if the EAVs go up or not. They can only charge that extra on the PTEL. They can only that small percentage. They don't get a windfall from extra development. What happens is that extra development gets mixed into the TIF or the entire EAV of that district, and then the percentage is figured out of what property, each property pays by what their portion of that property is. Now, they talk about, granted, afterwards, the full EAV is added into the mix, but also, and I saw it on the IML chart the last time we had this discussion, and that's the fact that the rest of the money, it's not a savings account for the schools or for any other taxing bodies. Basically, any money that is not spent and is not, there's all the debts paid and everything else off the TIF, any money that's left after the TIF gets distributed to all the taxing bodies percentage-wise.
Absolutely.
That's all that happens there. They don't get a big windfall of all the money or whatever. I mean,
I never suggested.
And most of us, or most of the municipalities will use every bit they can for development while they have it. I mean, it's not like there's going to be millions of dollars left in the pool.
No, I never suggested that there was going to be millions of dollars left in the pool. What I'm suggesting is, if you're utilizing TIF right, if development's not occurring, you can use the TIF to incentivize those developments, and the taxing districts absolutely will benefit from that at the end of the TIF, at the end of a successful TIF. Again, the TIF is a tool. It can be used well, it can be abused. If you use it correctly, it absolutely can benefit all the taxing districts.
Now, another question I got is who's the overseer of the TIF? The state?
The city.
Do they have an agency that overlooks, do we take, all right, we create a TIF here in, let's say, the city of McHenry. Does it not go downstate for any approvals or not?
No, the city would manage the fund. You have to do a annual report that documents everything, and you file that with the Illinois Comptroller's Office. They have you file every year. You would hold a joint review board with the taxing districts to present the report to them, to show them exactly how much money came in, what exactly you spent that money on. Then you file that with the comptroller. All those reports are, you can go to the comptroller's website right now and look up any TIF in the state and look up their reporting.
So basically the comptroller's office is the overseer of our TIFs.
They're the overseer. The city maintains the fund, and you spend the money according to the regulations of the TIF Act, and then the comptroller's office is the kind of regulatory body. Yeah. I
mean, we had a developer in here that wanted $55 million worth of TIF money, and that was for construction and everything else. And if it had gone through, let's say, and it shouldn't have been used for new construction and everything else, a taxpayer could take and send what to the controller as far as an agreement, as far as the fact that we're using TIF money inappropriately, or what? I mean, how does it get reported if a taxpayer feels that we're not using the TIF money appropriately? What is the procedure that they use? I mean, do they report it to the comptroller for the state, and then they look it over, or where does?
Yeah, they could do that, or they could sue you.
Or they could
essentially, they could sue you. Yeah.
All right. I think he answered quite a bit of my questions. Again, the last time we had it was the fact that most people didn't even believe that it affected property taxes. And it does affect everybody's property tax. Again, not a huge amount, but it does affect every property tax around. So.
Yeah, and again, I'd respond to that. If you're using TIF properly and you meet the but-for standard, it's a very minimal effect on any of the taxing districts, and they would all benefit in the end if you do it correctly.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions by council members?
Nobody else?
I guess that's it. Suzanne?
Oh, Pete, I don't know if you want to touch on this conclusion slide.
Oh, yeah. The last slide. So just to kind of summarize the three areas. Again, I talked earlier about there was the two standards, the conservation area versus the blighted area. If we're looking at the conservation area, obviously we'd have to do some research on building ages, but I'm pretty sure we can draw an area that would meet the building age, so you would only need to meet that conservation area standard. So I think it's pretty likely that we can create a boundary in that, particularly in that western area. Maybe can you go back to the slide with the three? Yeah. So that western area, I think, would be relatively easy to draw a boundary that we can meet the standard of the conservation area. The north area, the Richmond Road area, might be a little bit more difficult because it looked like a lot of the buildings were much newer. I don't know exactly where they found that 35-year cutoff. So, yeah, we would have to determine. So we would have to be able to draw a boundary. We could probably, creatively draw a boundary that would meet that 50% of 35 years in age or older. So I think the western area would probably be the most likely that would qualify. The northern area, we could probably draw an area that would qualify. The southern area had a lot of just undeveloped land, which again is much more difficult to qualify. So I wouldn't say that you couldn't do it, but it would be a lot more difficult to qualify vacant or undeveloped property, because TIF really isn't designed. It's not designed for new construction, so it would be much more difficult to qualify that area. Yeah.
Another question now, you mentioned the unimproved areas, vacant land. Is it to our benefit not to include those in the TIF? Like, let's say, on this one on the West McHenry area, we go all the way down south of Bull Valley to a vacant parcel. Are we better off not even having that in there to help meet our criterias, or?
Well, it kind of goes both ways. If it's undeveloped land and you establish the TIF and then something gets developed there, that's going to generate a lot of increment. So that would be to great benefit of the city to include that property, but it's much more difficult to qualify. So again, I'm not saying that it couldn't qualify, but there's different standards. The standards that I went through are for developed properties. There's different standards for vacant properties or undeveloped properties, because again, we can't determine deterioration of buildings if there's no buildings there. So there's different standards for those, and they're pretty specific in things like illegal dumping or the presence of a abandoned mine, or chronic flooding is typically the one that we'll use for undeveloped land is chronic flooding. So we would look for, we would pull up the FEMA maps and talk to your city engineer to determine those types of things. Right. If it qualifies, it's really easy to qualify if you meet one of those standards, but you have to meet one of those standards for vacant land.
And again, you've done a lot of different TIFs, so maybe a good question to ask you would, keeping those vacant parcels might make it a little bit more difficult to meet the criteria, but is the benefits of having them in there much greater than the risk of,
yeah, if you can make it qualify, the benefit is tremendous for the TIF, because again, if there's nothing there and you can get a development in there, that would generate far more increment than, just improving an existing structure. So the benefit, the chance of generating more increment, so yeah, you would want to at least look to see if you could make it qualify. Mm-hmm. And if we drew an area, when I do my eligibility analysis, if there's a developed part and then an undeveloped part, we'll look at those separately, and we'll determine, what qualifies or not. And typically, when I do it, and you can hire whoever you want, I'm not here to try to sell myself, but when I do my eligibility studies, I'll be very specific. And, if it doesn't qualify, I'm going to tell you it doesn't qualify. I'm not going to try to push the limits. I've worked with many communities where I've just said, no, sir, this doesn't qualify. I'm not going to do it.
Good example of what you're talking about, the vacant property. Again, when we originally did the TIF that we have right now, one of our first major projects was the townhouses along Boone Creek over there. And we paid for all the infrastructure as far as the sewers and all that that we needed as far as for that development, and we used TIF funds for that. And needless to say, the revenue that was generated from that is probably what bolstered the revenues for the TIF and made it, as lucrative as it has been over the years because of that area.
And that brings up actually another point, particularly if you're developing townhouses. That's really where you can have a detrimental impact on your taxing districts. If you're using TIF to fund a project that's going to generate more students for the school district and you've capped the school district, that's where there can be a significant impact. So there are actually provisions in the TIF Act where if you use TIF to fund a residential project that generates students, there's a provision in the TIF Act to compensate the school districts for those new students that are generated. Go ahead.
This may be a question for you or possibly for Doug, but just how relevant are establishing these TIF districts to developers, desirable developers that we want to bring into the community?
It's very relevant. One of the challenges that municipalities face is, if I'm a developer and I'm looking for a place to build my new whatever, if all of your neighbors have a TIF district and they can provide some incentive, and you don't, that definitely puts you at a disadvantage. And I can tell you most of your neighbors have multiple TIF districts, so it's a kind of a competitive thing. You're, as unfortunate as it is, you're competing with your neighbors for new developments, so.
If I can add to that, we get asked all the time if we have TIF districts. And for example, the former Sears property, that has been vacant for 13 years. And as Pete alluded to, there are very few tools we have to use to incentivize developments or to work developers looking for something. TIFs, and I think the other one you're alluding to, enterprise zones.
Right.
We're not in an enterprise zone. So,
yeah, enterprise zones are capped. There's a limited number of enterprise zones, and those are primarily for industrial job creation. And there's a limited number of enterprise zones in the state. And then periodically they'll open up for new applications, and then you have to compete against other communities I think there was a cap of 100 that they allowed in the state. I think they might have increased it recently. But you either get one or you don't. And if you don't, and then you pretty much, TIF is the only other tool that's available.
Excellent, thank you. And thank you so much for giving your time tonight to come out and do this for us.
Sure, no problem, my pleasure.
Alderman Glenn?
I just wonder, and this might be more directed towards Doug, do we have some kind of an idea as far as how many TIFs our neighbors are using within the area, as far as, let's say, areas that would be considered competitive as far as development, say the county more than anything, and probably maybe a little further eastward?
I don't know for sure, but I know multiple communities have multiple TIFs.
Yeah. But I think it would be helpful to see
you can go to
what our neighbors are doing and how much it has helped them or hasn't. And in some cases, you know what? If it's in the county, then it is affecting my property taxes too. Again, not significantly, but anything within our taxing bodies does affect us, and so we should just know about it, if nothing else. So
you can go to the county website, and it's one of the layers on their on the county website where you can look and see where all the TIF districts are.
I'd have to worry about a typo, so.
And I can assure you that most of your neighbors have them, because I did them. We'll just leave it at that.
We'll take it into consideration.
Go ahead. Oh, go on.
Hi, just a real quick question. Is it typical to have an established success business included in a TIF, in the TIF zone?
Well, it depends. What do you mean by successful? It could be a successful business in a very deteriorated structure, and the TIF could benefit by. A lot of times in downtown areas, municipalities will set up like facade programs to incentivize them to spruce up the condition of their buildings. So it can benefit a successful business by helping them improve their property. Otherwise, if it's a successful business and it's a new building, it's not really going to hurt anything, but it's not really going to generate much increment if there's. Does that make sense?
Kind of. How common is it to put a municipality building in a TIF?
Like a city building or another taxing district building?
Like this building and across the street.
It doesn't hurt. This building would typically be exempt, so you're not paying property taxes, so you're not going to generate any increment, and TIF is very limited on what you can't really spend TIF funds you can't spend TIF funds to build a new city hall. It's specifically prohibited. There are certain small things that you could do, small improvements to the property, but typically you're not generating any increment and you can't really use the money on your property.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Could you touch on that same question for park land, so city-owned parks?
So you can use TIF funds on park for certain things, again, the TIF Act is really specific on what are TIF eligible expenses and what aren't. There's not a lot of eligible expenses that you can use for a park, but there are some. So it could benefit a park. It could benefit if the school district had an actual school building within the TIF, they'd be just as eligible as any business to work with you to utilize those funds to improve their physical properties. Again, that you would have to be in a pretty successful TIF because, again, a school would be exempt as well, so you're not going to be generating any increment off of those improvements, but you can use it. It's typically a way to help get the school districts or other taxing districts to support the TIF, is if you include their actual properties so that they can utilize the TIF to benefit them.
Alderman Davis, go ahead.
To kind of build on that again, the three properties that were mentioned, the benefit could just be to have that contiguous property.
Yeah,
right?
Sometimes you have to just in properties just
So
to
it's not
make
necessarily the
everything
benefit from this building or others. It could be just that contiguous size and location to get that.
Yeah,
full-
sometimes you need to include stuff just so everything is touching.
Right.
But you could use it for a park, you could use it for the parking lot or for signage or stuff like that. So there's both ways you could benefit.
Any other questions? Go ahead.
If you don't mind, to touch on sort of what the process would look like if the city council opted to move forward with setting up a TIF, sort of what you mentioned your eligibility study and some other steps. So I just want to make sure that everyone here understands what that could potentially look like.
Sure. So a TIF plan is typically two main pieces. There's the redevelopment plan, where we kind of look at the area, project how much increment could possibly be generated, and then kind of what do you plan to do with that money. So we think it's going to generate X amount, and we want to improve this sewer line or whatever you plan to do with the money. But the big piece is the eligibility piece. So again, those factors that I went through, we would do a pretty in-depth study. We'd research everything and put together a eligibility report to determine which of those, whatever areas you wanted us to look at, we would determine whether they're eligible or not. Typically, I do it in a two-phase thing where I'll just do the eligibility first and then stop and then let you look at it. And are you comfortable with it? Do you want to move forward? It either qualifies or it doesn't, or maybe we have to tweak the boundaries or whatever. Once you have a plan, then there's a couple of steps you have to do. As I mentioned earlier, there's what we call the Joint Review Board meeting, so you would have to send that plan to all the affected taxing districts, the county, the school district, the park district, whatever taxing districts are affected. You give them the plan so they can review it, and then you have a meeting with them to get their input, and then you hold a public hearing. And then there's a bunch of notices you have. That's typically the most expensive part, depending on how big the TIF district is you got to send certified letters to all the property owners. So I know I've done a couple where, if you have 3,000 parcels in a TIF and you got to send 3,000 certified letters, that could be the biggest expense, is just the required notifications. But typically it's that, notify the taxing districts, have a meeting, and then hold a public hearing, generally in front of this board, so that any of the affected taxing districts or property owners could come and give their input. And then if you approve it, you file it with the county, and then you're on your way.
Okay, so, sorry.
Go ahead.
I just want to hear the cost.
Well, what I was about to say. So I guess there are two really main points that the staff was hoping to walk away with feedback on tonight. First of all, whether or not the city council wanted to move forward, and if so, with which of the areas that are indicated here. We obviously discussed this quite a bit with the staff, and so one of the main concerns that we have is the 31 construction that's upcoming, and whether or not that would impact those properties going south, to the degree that we might want to hold off on that section, because the last thing you want to do is go through this whole process, set up the TIF, and then immediately lose 3, 4, 5 years of increment off the front end of it, because there's not going to be a lot of development that's going on in that South 31 corridor. The other thing that we were talking about a little bit was Main Street, though, and making sure that we are doing something for those property owners on Main Street, because that's obviously a very demonstrated and significant need that I believe the City Council is all on board with. And so I guess, first of all, we wanted to just have a general discussion with the City Council about which of these areas you are interested in moving forward with, if any. And then secondarily, I believe that our next step would be to issue an RFP of some kind for a company such as Tesca to do this work for us and to perform those eligibility studies to get an idea of what that cost would end up being. Obviously, that's going to be largely determined by the area that we decide to look at. Because, Pete, correct me if I'm wrong, but you do a deep dive into each and every one of these parcels.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so obviously the larger the area, the more it costs. And so, the City Council then would have the opportunity, we'd issue the RFP, we'd bring it back, the City Council then would have the opportunity to scrub that and then decide if or how to move forward.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. It's absolutely going to be dependent on the size of the area that you do. Like, I'm doing a TIF now. It's 6 parcels. It's 1 shopping center. It's got 1 building and 6 parcels. That's something that's very easy for me to research and write that up. I did one down in Peoria. Again, that was like 3,500 parcels. Just for me to do my field work, it took a whole week with 3 guys to walk and take pictures of everything, so that's going to be much more expensive. But I'd be happy to give you guys a proposal if you decide you want to move forward on any of those 3 areas or all of them. The other thing to keep in mind with the cost is the preparation of the study is a TIF eligible expense. So if you decide to move forward and you hire me or anybody else, once you establish the TIF, you can then reimburse yourself with TIF revenue for the cost of preparation of the plan.
Thank you. Alderman Bazey.
Okay, back to my original question, cost. Let's just say the Richmond Road seems to be the smallest out of all 3. We're not going to hold you to a ballpark to go through the various steps. What would it cost to put a TIF together for that area?
Generally, I'm not going to do one for less than $20,000. That's probably my minimum. And then it's going to go up from there depending on, again, the size of the area. So,
okay.
I really don't want to give you anything too specific. But yeah, $20,000 is kind of the minimum, just to do the research, pulling of all the pins. Like I said, the one I just talked about with just 1 building, that's not even going to, that's probably going to, I told them $20,000, which is probably only going to cost 10 when I'm said and done, just because it was so easy. But $20,000 for just a standard TIF is probably the base, and then it'll go up from there depending on how many parcels and how much research it's going to take.
Okay, thank you.
Alderman Cloud.
Yeah, I was going to say that what we need to do is we need to make a decision on any area that we'd want to look at, which area we would prioritize. Then I think we need a committee of the whole where we discuss that entire area and get a vision of what we want to see there before we start talking about TIFs and everything else as far as moving forward. I think more than anything else, for the council's edification, as well as all the taxpayer edification, that, hey, this is what we're attempting to do for the future, you know what I mean? So that you see where that money's going rather than just say it's going to a TIF. And these are the types of projects we want to see, and this is where we want to be. And that doesn't mean it isn't like the grant money to where we can't change anything, but at least we have a vision of where we're heading for whatever area we decide on. I think that's my opinion where we need to go to start.
Sure. Isn't that what the comp plan that we just adopted?
Well, but we need specifics more, looking at all those parcels of wherever the TIF is and of exactly what we want to see over there. And then like I say, once we've decided to some extent, I'm not saying every single brick and mortar is exactly, in place, but once we have an idea, then maybe we know that we've got possibly looking for developers that are looking at it, knowing that we're possibly going to create a TIF, and then maybe, come up with some good plans from there, knowing what our broad visions, let's say, are, and that specifically, this parcel, we want this, and this parcel, we want that, but what we overall want to see as a whole, across the whole area.
Okay. Alderman Banning, go ahead.
I'm just curious, does it make sense to work, let's say we decide to adopt and institute TIFs in all three of these areas. Does it make sense to put off the 31 corridor for a couple of years, or with the investment and efforts that we're putting in to establish the two, does it make more sense to do them at the same time, or would putting it off, I'm just looking financially at what makes the most sense for us to invest, or it would be fine to repeat services in a few years?
So the issue is road improvements, and is that?
Route 31 is being redeveloped, and it's just going to be an absolute hot mess for a couple of years, so I doubt anything new is going to be happening there. So to Suzanne's point, we're not going to be probably getting a lot of additional investment in that. But when it's done, I would think that that'll be really relevant. So does it make sense to do it 3 years down the road, or to try to do it all while we're working on this project at this time?
It might. Generally speaking, like this small TIF that I just mentioned that I'm working on now, and I won't say where it is, but they have a developer in place. He's got a plan. It's not economically feasible without some incentive, which is why they're exploring TIF to make the project economically feasible. That's the ideal situation, where you have a developer ready to go, you establish TIF, and now you have 23 years to generate that increment. It's generally not a good idea to just create a TIF and cross your fingers and hope that it works with, because then you're just wasting. TIF is limited to 23 years, so you don't want to go too fast and you don't want to go too slow. You got to kind of figure that out. But yeah, if there's something that's going to be an impediment and nothing's going to happen for 3 years, you probably don't want to set up that TIF right away and just waste those 3 years. Don't know the specifics of the issue that you're talking about, but that's kind of what you would be looking at. Does that make sense?
Yep, absolutely. Thank you.
Go ahead. Alderman Doherty.
Oh, thank you. I guess a new member, I've been looking at this information because I've met with the staff a couple times. I would be hesitant to go with all at one time. I think the city has done a great job of controlled growth and managing their current TIF and doing other things. I think the more conservative or the prudent would be possibly do the Richmond Road, a part of the West McHenry, because I believe you have interest being already shown in those areas by developers. It would scare me at this point to say we're doing all three and all of a sudden have our staff inundated with development in every front possible. That and the fact you're...
Well, that would be a nice problem to have.
So bring it up.
Anyway, that would be where I'm coming from. I think, it would be better to pick one or two of them, do a really good job of developing. And again, I think you've done a great track record already with the existing TIF. We can show the money has been well spent. We see the benefits on a weekly basis down there with the parks, the Riverwalk. I think we could do it in these other two areas, and you now are getting the whole city to bind everything else. If we want to take this other parcel and add that at a later date, another TIF, who's going to turn that down when they see the success the city has had with its other TIFs? Just my point of view.
Just one quick thing to kind of piggyback on what the three of you just said, and this would be a minor factor. I think the bigger factor is, the potential of success for the TIF is you want to time it out for the most success. But if you are going to do multiple at the same time, it would save you a little bit of money as far as, cost for myself or whatever consultant that you choose. If I did multiple at the same time, it would be cheaper to come out and do all the field work on the same day. We could hold all the meetings on the same day. That would be a minimal expense, but you could save at least a little bit of money if you did more than one at the same time.
Thanks.
Alderman Miller.
Thank you for your presentation. I appreciate it. As I've looked at this map and had conversations with staff, I think the South 31 project needs to go on hold just because of the expansion, and I'm not sure anybody's going to launch a new business during a, to quote Alderwoman Bainey, hot mess. So I would like to just focus on what Director Martin has indicated, the North Richmond Road. We already have developers interested. That needs to be done so that he can move on and get those big buildings redone nicely into what we can redevelop them in. I feel compelled to say that West McHenry is in need of a facelift, and we now have two anchors. We have a brand new trio on one end, and we have a facelifted dual on the other end, and not a lot of beauty in between. And we have a lot of hodgepodge in between, which is going to take a little longer for Director Martin to aggregate those owners to get some development done, because it's duck goose out there. So I think North is going to do its own thing once we have the incentives in place, but West is the land, I almost put a different word in there, that's going to require the most amount of effort to get the most amount done, because you don't have a good launch part. You know, you're going to have to buy houses, take them down, and rebuild. And I don't know if Director Martin wants to add to that conversation about how much interest you've had on the western corridor, but I really think, and that includes Main Street, so I really think that that encompasses a great deal of space that we need to spend attention on.
Yeah, I think we have some momentum on Main Street going right now, and I think we will get more interest on West Route 120. It's very difficult right now. The parcels are very small. They're very substandard, a lot of obsolete structures, and you just need to do some aggregation of land. But there is some quality development. Like you said, the trio is down there. There's a vacant property down there. Sunnyside's there, so we have some quality development down there. There just needs to be some parcels aggregated and put together and redeveloped.
So, go ahead.
I was going to say, just to move the discussion forward, I would agree with Alderwoman Miller that the Richmond Road area and that West McHenry area would be the two areas I would be interested in pursuing, and whether it's bringing to a committee of the whole or engaging a consultant to start the process, I would be in favor of that.
Thank you. Any other input from council members? Alderman Glenn?
Just the fact that looking at this West McHenry area, and I look out all the way on the west end and south of 120, the soils out there are not exactly in the type of condition that you would be, let's say, buildable. It's going to be more open area, always was, has always been figured on that, because but if you take Pheasant Trail out there, that they never even built the last street because of the fact that the soils just wouldn't hold the development. And there's a lot of marshlands out in that area, everything west of Boone Creek from Whispering Oaks going west and up into that area. And I just think more than anything else is as we talk about development, let's look at development of what's more possible and probable rather than just a dream, Let's make sure we're looking at what makes sense. Yeah.
So which area makes sense to you?
Well, no, the rest of it's fine. I just, areas like that, again, like I say, that I don't really think are developable properties. Do we want to infringe, and make it harder to create that TIF because of those areas that we pick? That's all I'm looking at.
Okay.
And maybe there is a benefit, I know we looked at for detention for Lakeland Park. Maybe we need some infrastructure over there as far as recreating ponds or whatever. Again, whatever we do, let's just make sure we have a reason for why we're doing it, that's all.
And just to be clear, you don't have to designate, you don't have to know right now exactly, you know, you would engage somebody, they would do an eligibility study, and they'll let you know what actually qualifies. So that would be the biggest determinator.
I just look at the acreage percentage of that West McHenry area, and it's a large percentage of it. I mean, 10% or 8%, that's a large percentage just for, one or two parcels. So that's all. I just think we need to look at it just so that we know where we're at.
Alderman Doherty? Richmond Road and West McHenry, are you good with those two locations? Yeah, okay. Alderman Bassi?
I'd actually like to have a committee as a whole and scope out exactly which area. Definitely nothing in the Boone Creek area because of Route 31, or Route 31, sorry. So I would like a committee as a whole and discuss it a little further, carve out exactly what we're looking at before we start spending any money.
Alderman Davis?
Yeah, I'm in support of the West McHenry area and the Richmond Road. We've kind of designated areas that we know could have some input for the TIF. To me, I think we need to get them engaged to really understand what's feasible, what's not, and then, as he had mentioned, you can be creative on these aren't set in stone, obviously. So let's look at what we can get, be creative, and figure out what makes the most sense. So to try to narrow that down and then go to them, we might be missing out on opportunities that we should have included that we didn't. But
and generally, I won't speak for other consultants, but when I do my eligibility, whatever area you give me, I'm going to look at a bigger area just to see what actually qualifies, just show you, this is what's possible, and then it's better to start big and work your way down than to go the other way.
Alderman Cook?
There's an awful lot of potential down my way. I'm sorry, not my way, Ward 6. I'm sorry, West McHenry. And like you said, new gas station all along down that strip. Property, housing both sides. It's on its way up. We put that TIF there.
So are you in favor of the West McHenry area, but also what about Richmond Road area?
Both. Yeah, okay. I'm all for it.
Okay. Alderman Miller?
I just want to add to my comment that if we start, and I'm just talking out loud, if we start carving, I want to make sure that the roller rink and the Quonset hut and the corner of Main and 31 are in whatever we create on the Main Street TIF, because I think that those will be poised for redevelopment once the expansion is done, and because of what they are, they're going to probably take a little longer to redevelop than the old Sears building. But I don't know that to be true. But I think it's important, even though it's a city-owned property, our intention is not to develop our own rec center there, it's to sell it to someone else, so it needs to be inside whatever we carve.
Agreed.
But you heard me, I'm in support of Richmond Road and West McHenry.
Thank you. All right. Alderman Glenn, go ahead.
And I made this comment way years ago when we created the other TIF, and that's the fact that these TIFs are only going to work unless we can as long as we get the property owners on board and get them excited and get them developed. And that's going to be Doug's target more than anything else. We need property owners, because we could create these TIFs and have all this, possibilities of help, but if the property owners won't help themselves, it's not going to help the TIF area. Sure. So we got to get them all on board.
Perfect. All right. Pete, thank you very much, sir.
All right, thanks for your time. I hope this was helpful.
I appreciate your time. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Good night.
All right, so we got direction from City Council. Suzanne, do you need anything else from that? For Committee of the Whole, do you suggest that we do Committee of the Whole before we do an RFP to discuss how far, but we don't even know what properties definitely hit anyway?
I mean, I think to Pete's point, if you start carving things out before we really assess them, we're limiting our possibilities. So, I mean, my recommendation would be just to go with what's shown currently in the comp plan, and then we can carve them out from there as the council feels appropriate.
I agree with that. Can we get a straw poll on that?
Yeah, I would be in favor of not doing the committee of the whole. We're not the experts, and I'd rather hire someone to let us know what is eligible and what opportunities are available.
And after that comes back, then we would do a committee of the whole and have a discussion strictly on that.
Yep.
Alderman Glab.
I just like I say, and I've asked many a times if we get visions of the whole council discussing it and pinpointing so that the city has a vision of certain areas of what they want to see, rather than this alderman thinks this or that alderman thinks that. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. That everybody collectively, whether we're all in agreement of everything or not, at least as a whole, the council has a vision, and that's important, I think, for us.
Okay. Sure. Alderman Doherty?
I'd say go ahead and then come back.
Okay. Alderman Bassey?
Committee as a whole.
Thank you. Alderman Davis?
I'm in agreement that let's figure out what we have and then have a committee of the whole after.
Thank you. Alderman Cook?
I agree.
Thank you. Alderman Miller? I agree. All right. You have the direction? We're good? All right. Thank you all very much for participating in that. All right. Next item on the agenda, staff reports. Suzanne?
Well, I'm going to follow right into that with a conversation about development and a committee of the whole. So now that the new council is seated, those of you who have been listening, we've been trying for quite some time to sit down with the council and have a discussion, as Alderman Glab indicated, regarding the downtown city-owned parcels and where that development could be headed. I know that there are also some questions kind of floating around that have come over email and been discussed over the phone with a couple of the aldermen related to the comp plan and the legality of the comp plan and the requirements or lack thereof for the city to approve development based on what is shown in the comp plan. So it's staff's recommendation that we wrap those two conversations together. Because I think it's going to be probably most helpful to be able to have that discussion as a group, have the council be able to ask their questions and have them answered. McCardle's office has been looped into this conversation as well, and so they're going to be doing some additional research for us related to the legalities so that we can have an informed discussion about that. So I just wanted to give the council kind of our perspective on that, the staff's perspective, and get your feedback, if any, related to the comp plan and the direction you'd like to see for that conversation.
Thank you. Brandy, do you want to say something?
I was just going to add to that for the comp plan discussion. What we've been asked for so far has just been very theoretical. And so we can dive into the theoretical approach to say if we did have a development, and it did do this, but anytime we're going to do a theoretical, it's going to be, it depends. That's the answer, is always going to be it depends. Here's the factors, but it's going to depend on what is actually presented and what is actually going to go in there. So any opinion, we can provide the guidance, but any opinion's kind of going to be limited to what is actually going to end up happening.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I just wanted to point out again, the staff has, any developer that has approached the staff related to development of those parcels downtown has been told that we're holding off until the city council has the opportunity to have a discussion about what the ideal situation is for downtown. So there's no development that is imminent, and so that gives us the time and space to have this conversation with the council.
All right. Thank you. Any other staff reports? Ross?
I'll just add we're still working on environmentals on those properties too, so that's taking some time with IEPA. So there's nothing out there right now that's pressing, right?
Thanks, Ross.
And I want to just, before we get off this topic, the second meeting in June 16th, is there anyone that's going to be out of town or unavailable on that date? our hope is to have a committee of the whole related to this, either before the meeting or just as a discussion item during the meeting. And so I just wanted to make sure that no one has that day crossed off on their calendar. Good? All right, thanks. Let me know if anything comes up for June 16th. Thank you.
All right. Mayor's report, I will not be here next meeting. Doug and Bill and I will be at ICSC in Las Vegas trying to bring back retailers and businesses into our community, and along with other neighboring communities that are there as well. So wish us luck on that, but I will not be at the next meeting. So other than that, that's all I have besides, once again, congratulations to all those that got elected or re-elected. Once again, look forward to the next 4 years. So thank you. City Council comments? Alderman Gleb?
Took tonight and we approved a variance for a parcel to where they had a rental that was not conforming. I guess my question is have we looked to see what they're paying in water bills? Because according to our ordinance, we do not charge by the meter, we charge by the use of each unit. So in other words, if there are 2 units being serviced by that, they need to be paying 2 debt services. And I wonder, on the ones that we've approved in the past, have we looked at that also? That, again, it's just that they're all paying their fair share. And maybe those that maybe haven't come forward yet, but we know we're, maybe we need to contact them as well. I don't know. But I think it's just one of those other small things that, to be fair for everybody else, that would make sure that everybody's paying their fair share.
We do enforce that. 100% we do.
All right. Thank you. So, in other words, the gentleman that got approved tonight
2 debt services.
Could be paying 2 debt services.
Yes, correct.
He's aware of that?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I just had one where we added 15 to a unit that we didn't know about. So, I mean, it happens. Unfortunately, when we find them, we fix them.
Sooner we can get it paid off, the lower our water bills will go.
Any others? Alderman Cook?
Just an update on fluoride. All right, the state of Utah just ixnayed all their fluoride out of their drinking water. Florida, the next state, probably would happen within the month here. And then looking forward to get rid of the fluoride in our water system. I know it's a long, drawn-out thing, but working on it, okay? Just wanted to give you an update.
Alderman Miller?
Thank you. I just wanted to publicly thank Mayor Jett. He, last week, met with the McHenry Red Hat Society, and he has now made 8 new fans. They have all volunteered to be part of any focus group that he would like to create. I think he got an earful, and he has some elders of the community that are ready and willing to serve. So thank you, Mayor Jett, for going and partaking. And just for clarity, he did not wear a red hat, but he will at his next meeting.
I will at the next one.
I offered him a bandana, I offered him a headband, I offered him a fascinator, and he didn't take any. The second thing I'd like to do is thank the Chamber for an incredible ribbon cutting that many of us attended for the 3rd rendition of the mini shops down on the Riverwalk. That is truly a success story when we look at how it became what it is with the partnership of the Chamber, High School District 156, and the city, and is truly just a story that can't be told often enough for not only our community, but the entrepreneurs that we support down there. So thank you for those that came. It was incredible. There were hundreds of people down there for the ribbon cutting, and they are off to a glowing start. So if you haven't been down there, there's 8 new shops with 2 returners, and they're all welcoming you to come visit and see what they have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
I just want to add to that. I saw representatives from at least 2 other communities down there looking to copy the success that we have had. So hands off.
Yeah. That's pretty much what I told them.
Well, it's interesting because I think some of you know, and not that I'll expand on it, but I taught in another city who copied us. and they didn't know I was from McHenry. So when I inquired about the little mini shops they were creating down in Utica, they said, "Oh, we stole this idea from McHenry." And I said, "Well, McHenry sold it from somebody else, so let's just keep the research and development going." But it's amazing how it's gaining popularity, and people are coming here just to see it. So, and I think out of all of the ones that I've been to, ours is the best.
Agreed.
So thank you, everybody who had a piece of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Sue. Any other comments by City Council? See none. I'm looking for a motion to adjourn. Alderman. Okay. Second. Alderman Doherty.
Second.
Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Bainey?
Yes.
Alderman Dougherty?
Yes.
Oh, sorry. I'm so bad at pronouncing your name. I apologize. Alderman Glab?
Yes.
Alderwoman Massey?
Yes.
Alderman Davis?
Yes.
Alderman Cook?
Yes.
Alderwoman Miller?
Yes.
I'll practice your name.
Thank you, Council. Thanks, Trish. All right, thank you, staff. Everyone have a good evening.